Alrighty, so we've got a tier list for all the Syndicate weapons, and I decided to throw in the Syndicate effects as well. Now, this is just the weapons you get from Arbiters of Hexis, Steel Meridian, Red Veil, and the like. Not every weapon you can get from every Syndicate, these are just most commonly known, or at least known to me, as the Syndicate weapons. Now, there is a disclaimer. These are my personal opinions of the weapons, and I am human, so my opinion may change. I don't have enough resources to fully mod, arcane, etc. all these weapons, so you won't see them doing millions of damage in the testing videos. Lastly, one of these weapons will have a mod that is available in the Nightwave Volume 9, but I don't have it. However, because that mod changes the weapon so much, I will rank the weapon as if it does have it. Enough with the disclaimer. We are doing the order of secondary, primary, syndicate abilities, and finally, melee. So if there's a specific weapon you want, go to that section. First up, we have the Racta Ballistica. I pronounced it terribly as the Basilica, but it is actually Ballistica. Now this weapon, I want to love so much. Much like a bow, it has a charged mode and a quick shot. If you are using the charged mode, you cannot, and I mean cannot, use multi-shot. Your bolts will just actively avoid your targets. However, since we have weak point mods now, that could be how you run this weapon. But my favorite is to use it as a shotgun with the quick shot. Now, the quick shot does fire off a series of 4 bolts, so you'll need to reload a lot more, but that is fine for me personally. Overall, I'm going to give this weapon a B ranking. Then we have the Sancti Castanas. These are so bad. They're a thrown weapon that you have to detonate with your alternate fire. If you're on console, or even a newer player, you may not know what your alternate fire is, so your throwable mines will just stick in your enemy until you use that alt fire. These are pure electric mines, but will always give an electric status even if you have something like magnetic modded on your weapon. Because they are also an explosive weapon, it doesn't get benefits from galvanized aptitude. That, and a very low ammo amount, it gives a D tier from me. Next, we have the Vacor Marilock. This is a fun lever action pistol that you flip around with every shot. It also comes with a unique mod, Shrapnel Rounds. It gives you 200% multi-shot at a cost of taking 66% of the weapon's damage. I personally use this mod because I just throw a ton of shots from my Marilock. That being said, the Marilock set up this way may not be for everyone, or you may not be able to get Shrapnel Rounds because the Nightwave shop may not have it. Still, this pistol is fun, and I would give it a try. A tier for me. The Cyanoid Gamma Core. I have such a love-hate relationship with this hand laser. The only downside to it is that this thing is pure magnetic with no IPS. That means that you can't run a lot of the meta builds on it. If you ever want a fun beam that you can sweep over a crowd and pump them with various status effects, you can. Also, since this thing is magnetic, it deals 325% damage to shields and overguard. So against Corpus and Pexi Escamus, this can strip their protection quickly, and either let you finish them with the beam, or crunch them with anything else you want. That being said, this still gets a B tier, although if you get the Incarnate adapter for it, I'll say it might bump it up to A tier. The Telos Ac Bolto is interesting, and straight up lies to you. It says the bolts that unalive a target will cause the body to deal damage to anything that they pass by. That is not entirely true because only the bolts do the damage, not the bodies. That being said, it is still a fun secondary if you want to pin enemies to walls with massive metal darts. The Ac Bolto is mostly a puncture weapon, with little impact so you won't be able to get much slash. Compared to the normal Ac Bolto, it sacrifices critical stats for more status, so with this thing I would run gas and electric on it to deal your DPS. B tier for me. Last, in the secondary category, we have the Secura Dual Sestra. It is one of my favorite secondary weapons. with the normal dual Sestra. The stats are pretty nice, and while it may not have the highest damage or whatever, this thing has a massive magazine and even more fire rate. With its decent status chance, the dual Sestra can shower an entire hallway or even a map with various status effects. This can do a lot, and I wish I have invested more in it to take it through Steel Path, but I have not yet. This weapon does need some reload speed to make it comfortable, but otherwise, this thing is amazing. A tier for me. We're moving on to primaries now. The Recta Ceranos may be a primary impact bow, but it has the highest draw speed of any other bow. It may not seem like a big feature, but you will be able to let loose arrow after arrow and won't have to worry about doing an uncharged shot. It does have slightly lower critical and status chance than the base Ceranos, but with its increased damage and faster charge rate, I think that makes up for it. You could run internal bleeding on it, but personally I still use hunter munitions. There are so many different ways you can run this, and there's not just one build fits all. For me, the Recta Ceranos is an A tier. The Sancti Tigris is such a blast from the past. It's a duplex trigger, which means you click and fire, then release and fire the other shot. It has a higher reload, damage, and critical chance, but slightly lower critical damage and accuracy than the base variant. Honestly, accuracy doesn't matter much for a shotgun, since at least when I use them, I get up close and personal. If there's an enemy in front of you that doesn't go flying from the first shell, then just give them both barrels. A tier for me. The Vakor Heck is a shotgun that causes me so many annoyances. It got me through so much of the star chart and even into Steel Path until I started using various Incarnans. The fact this thing has 8 rounds that pack such a punch is amazing, and while it does take a while to reload, there are plenty of mods for that. The thing that infuriates me though is that it can't use the Scattered Justice mod, a Heck-specific mod. Now you may say, well, technically, the Vakor Heck isn't the Heck. And for that, I have 2 examples. The Kuva Heck can use it, and another Syndicate weapon later in this tier list can use another Syndicate mod as well. Why not the Vakor Heck? Either way, this thing gets an A tier from me. Now, earlier I said there'd be a weapon that has a mod that I don't have yet in the Nightwave, and this is it. The Cyanoid Simulor. Normally the Simulor launches balls of gravity that will bounce off enemies and merge into a larger singularity. It is very hard to hit enemies that get close to you, and normally I would give this thing a straight up D tier. However, with the Spontaneous Singularity mod, this weapon causes the orbs to explode as soon as they hit a target. I wish this mod was just part of the weapon, but you need this mod to make the Simulor good, and maybe even great. Without actually being able to test the mod, all I can give the Simulor is a C, until I have a chance to test it. The Tierlist Boltor is next on the list. Much like the Ak Bolto, the Boltor has a similar sort of punch through to it. What the Boltor has that the Ak Bolto doesn't is various rifle mods. It's a fully automatic weapon compared to the Ak Bolto as well, but these two are very similar. I don't have much to say about the Boltor, but it gets a B tier. The Secura Penta. I wish this weapon was good, and it is just annoying to mod and to use. Much like the Castanas, you need to know your alternate fire for this grenade launcher. The Penta, however, has several mods that help with this, and to get them, you have to run the index. The best is probably napalm grenades, which causes the Penta rounds to simply explode as they hit anything. This is the best one, and tether grenades just entangles enemies, and only explode without using your ult fire after 10 seconds. This weapon gets a D tier. We're moving on to Syndicate abilities now. Get ready for disappointment. Just so you know, these abilities all have the same conditions. You need to gain 2000 affinity while holding the item. Then it has an effect which always deals 1k damage within 25 meters of the player, but it varies on element per Syndicate, followed by a 30-second cooldown. Just keep this in mind, these effects have those conditions, plus that effect. Blight is the effect of the Recta set, or from the Red Veil. This is probably the best because it recovers 25% of your Warframe's best energy, deals 1000 viral damage with a proc within 25 meters, and grants you 10% movement speed. I like using this one because of that energy regen mainly, but there are a lot of ways to recover energy in Warframe. The viral damage is nice, and the movement speed is as well. A tier for me. Purity, however, is probably one of the worst. It comes from the new Loka Syndicate, or from some of the Sancti weapons. It deals corrosive damage, but that is all the good it does. Its other effect is that it heals you for 25% of your max health, and increases your max health by 25%. Now, you Inaros mains don't get excited yet, because this is only your base health for both of these. So that modded health that you have that skyrockets into the 10k won't be affected by this at all. This is a D tier for me. The Justice effect is next, and similar to Purity, it comes from some of the Vacor weapons or from the Steel Meridian. It deals blast damage, which is quite nice for dealing with some trash fodder, although its other effects of granting max health and armor are trash. While having some extra armor can be nice, it won't be enough for consistent use. D tier for me. If you want more energy though, Entropy is the one for you. Coming from some of the Cyanoid weapons and from Cephalon Suda, Syndicate, it releases a blast of magnetic damage. Now this can be very nice because if the blast cracks shields or overguard, it will also give an electric proc. Note that this is not an effect of entropy, just an effect of the magnetic damage. This also restores 25% of your energy, as well as giving you 25% more max energy. While it is still your base, this is quite a nice effect in my opinion. A tier. Then we have Truth, which is an interesting effect coming from some of the Telos set. The Arbiters of Hexis bring us an ability which deals gas damage. This may not deal a ton, but remember, gas is an AoE, so the gas can deal a lot more than 1k from the status effect. It has the same bad effect of recovering 25% of your max health, but its other effect grants you plus 25% wall latch, aim glide, and parkour velocity. This means you'll go quite fast for a short time after you burst. This is a unique effect, so I will give it a B. Lastly, for Syndicate abilities, we have Sequence from the Sakura set or from the Perrin sequence. This deals radiation damage, which can provide some nice crowd control, but it also does the same thing as health. Instead, it just recovers shields and grants max shields. The only reason I think this is a lot better than the health effect is because if you have 0 shields and trigger this, you will get some, whereas if you have 0 health, you will just get knocked down. Still though, unless you are running this on a certain frame, I don't think it's amazing, so I will give it a C tier. Alrighty, now to perhaps the best for last, or the worst for last, we have the melee weapons. The Rakta Dark Dagger. The simple dagger is perhaps the most powerful weapon, in my opinion, in Warframe. Why is that? Well, because this dagger has so many different effects. It can use the Syndicate mod for the Dark Dagger, unlike the Vacor Heck, which grants it Blight and Status Chance. It also has an effect called Mind Haze, its own unique effect. When equipped, you'll reduce detection by 25%. It may not seem like a lot, but then we have the big effect. Damage to an enemy affected by radiation leeches 5% of the damage to your shields. This is such a powerful effect, allowing you to become simply immortal. S tier. Then we have the Sancti Magistar. The Magistar has 2 effects. The first is that heavy attacks with it heal your allies, and yourself, within range. 5% at the start, plus an additional 5% for each combo level that you have. The second is that while you're holding the Magistar, you have a 20% chance to resist status effects. It may not come up often, but it might be enough to save you from going down. Personally though, I don't notice the healing, but sometimes healing your allies is quite nice. B tier for me. The Vacor Sidon is an interesting little trident. While you are blocking attacks with it, you store charges within the trident, and then once you have 15, you can block and heavy attack to release a radial blind. It blinds enemies within 15 meters for 5 seconds. And yes, this is exactly like Excalibur's ability. Also, while you're holding the sight on, you have a 50% chance to resist being knocked down. Now, I don't know if this stacks with other mods that give you the chance to resist being knocked down, but if it does, it gets an easy A tier. However, I'm still going to put this weapon in A tier. The Cyanoid Heliocore is such a fun hammer in my opinion. This hammer allows you to scan enemies that you eliminate with it, but if your codex entry for that enemy has been completed, you can do a lot more. If you perform a heavy attack on an enemy, you'll create a specter of that enemy that lasts for 30 seconds. The only bad thing is that this cannot create Eximus units, and will just make a base variant of what you hit. That being said, it can still be useful, and you can get Kvatskans from the Derelict with the Heliocore. A tier for me. Much like most of the Syndicate weapons, the Telos Boltes have two effects. The first is a simpler one, which grants your frame plus 20%, bullet jump, roll distance, aim glide, and wall latch. This weapon simply has to be in your loadout for these effects to happen, and not while you're holding it. The other effect is called Storm Path. When you slide attack an enemy, you create a massive 14-meter vortex sucking enemies into it. When you perform another slide attack, it will launch the enemies from the vortex and give them the lifted status. However, this cannot affect Eximus units, and will also only trigger once every 6 seconds. A tier for me. The last weapon we have is the Secura Lecta. The Secura Lecta is a whip that grants you additional credits on kills with it, starting at 2 times when you get it, and it scales up to 4 times when you get it up to MR18, and that is the max you can get. Although if you use something like Chroma, you can get even more credits from this whip. Also, for some reason, this weapon has a plus 50% attack speed for finisher attacks. But this is still only a B tier for me. I hope you have enjoyed this tier list. I want to say that this is my opinion, simply as that. It may change as updates happen, or your opinions may also vary. If you like it, please comment or like or whatever you feel like. Have a great day!